My parents told me they loved my brother's children more than mine. Not in anger, not in a fight. Just calmly, over the phone. And when I asked why, they said, Ava doesn't really belong to this family. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I just listened, and then I walked away. Quietly. But what they didn't know was that the one child they erased was the only one who had a name in Grandpa's real will. So tell me, what would you do if your child was erased? Not in words, but in ink. My name is Camille Rhodes. I'm 30, a single mom, and for most of my adult life, I've been the easy one in the family. The one who doesn't cause trouble. The one who shows up, stays late, smiles politely, and helps clean up even when no one asks. My daughter Ava just turned 13. She's smart, kind, and she somehow still loves people who barely notice her. That's the part that gets me the most. Growing up, my parents, George and Lillian, always made it clear that my older brother Thomas was their pride and joy. He married well, has 2 sons, and inherited the family business. I, on the other hand, got pregnant young, worked my way through school, and became a middle school teacher. No family legacy, no applause, just quiet judgment disguised as concern. At every holiday, Thomas's sons get the biggest gifts, the front row seats at the recital, the loudest claps at church. Ava, she gets polite nods and half hugs. Once she made Grandma a Mother's Day card and got a quick, distracted, "That's sweet," in return, while her cousin got a framed portrait of himself on the mantle. But I told myself it wasn't on purpose, that maybe I was being too sensitive, that surely, deep down, they loved Ava as much as the other kids. Then came Easter last year. We were all at my parents' house, the usual overdone setup with crystal dishes and formal seating. When I walked into the dining room, I noticed the place cards. Ava's name wasn't on the table. Instead, she had a plastic chair at the folding table in the kitchen. I tried to play it off, but I'll never forget the way she looked up at me, smiling, and said, "It's okay, Mom. Maybe next year I'll get to sit with everyone." That night, I cried in the shower, not just because they made her feel small, but because I had let it happen again. But I kept quiet. I still showed up. I still hoped. Because part of me thought, if I keep being the dependable one, maybe one day they'll see Ava the way I do. Turns out, that day never came. And what they did next made it painfully clear. My daughter was never truly part of their legacy. And I was only ever part of their family when it was convenient. The phone call came on a Tuesday. I had just gotten home from work, still in my blazer, my heels kicked off by the door. Ava was sitting at the kitchen table doing homework, humming to herself, blissfully unaware that her world was about to get a little smaller. It was my mother. "Camille," she said, her voice oddly formal, "we'd like you to come to the will reading this Friday. Your father thought it would be appropriate. Appropriate. Not important or you should be there, just appropriate." I hesitated. "Of course. Should I bring Ava?" A pause. Then she said, too quickly, "No, it's mostly a legal formality. Just family." I almost laughed. "Just family?" she said, as if Ava wasn't part of it. But I didn't argue. I just said okay. The reading was held in Mr. Halloran's office, our family's longtime attorney. The room was quiet, with a long mahogany table and chairs that somehow always made you feel smaller than you were. Thomas sat across from me, his wife perched beside him like a socialite ready for a country club meeting. Their boys were outside, apparently old enough to be included in the occasion. I was alone. Mr. Halloran cleared his throat and began reading. The house, to Thomas. The business, to Thomas. The lake cabin, to Thomas's sons. Stocks, bonds, vintage coins, all neatly listed, all spoken with ease. My name wasn't mentioned once, neither was Ava's. I didn't even realize I had stopped breathing until Thomas leaned back and whispered to his wife, "Guess Dad kept it traditional." I turned to my mother, who sat stone-faced beside the window. "Mom?" I asked quietly. "Ava?" She sighed, like I had asked something exhausting. "Camille, sweetie, you know how your father felt. He loved Ava, but she's not really of our blood." It hit like a punch to the chest. "Not of our blood?" "She takes after other sides of the family," she added vaguely, not meeting my eyes. I knew what she meant. Ava's father was mixed race and not someone they had ever accepted. Not openly, not even privately. I clenched my jaw. You mean you excluded my daughter from her grandfather's will because she's not pure enough for the Rhodes name? Lower your voice, she hissed. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Harder for who? I want to ask you something, and be honest with yourself. If someone told your child they weren't good enough, not directly, but by erasing them, would you stay quiet to keep the peace? Because I did. I stayed quiet for years, but this was the line, and they had finally crossed it. We didn't talk on the drive home. Ava sat in the passenger seat, hugging her backpack, staring out the window with that blank expression kids wear when they're trying not to feel something too big for their age. I kept my eyes on the road, knuckles white around the steering wheel, trying not to cry. Not yet. Halfway home, she finally spoke. Mom, did Grandpa really not leave me anything? Not even a letter? My throat tightened. No, baby, not even a letter. She nodded slowly, eyes still on the trees outside. Then, with a small voice, is it because I don't look like the rest of them? I pulled over. The tears hit hard and fast, but I wiped them quickly. I turned to her and cupped her cheek. No, it's not because of you. It's because they never really saw you. And that's not your fault. That's on them. She nodded again, trying to be strong, and I hated that she even knew how. That night, I sat in my room with the door shut, my phone lighting up with messages from my mother. Let's not blow this out of proportion. It's still a family matter. You and Ava are always welcome, Camille. Don't be dramatic. I didn't reply. I didn't block her either. I wanted her to see that silence. That was new from me. For years, I'd been the reliable daughter. The one who drove Mom to her appointments, organized birthday dinners, paid for groceries when their card bounced. I showed up, even when they didn't. But something shifted that night. Not out of rage. I didn't scream. Didn't curse. I just stopped. Stopped picking up calls. Stopped replying to group texts. Stopped volunteering to be the bridge between people who built walls around my daughter. The next Sunday, Thomas texted asking if Ava would be joining the family picnic. I replied, "We're unavailable." No explanation, no apology. It was a quiet kind of severing, the kind they wouldn't notice until they reached for me and found nothing. You know, people think cutting ties has to be loud, that it looks like slammed doors and final speeches. But sometimes it's just choosing not to show up. Not to explain yourself, not to beg for a seat that was never set for you in the first place. And that was the beginning of our peace. It started small. A missed call from my mom, then another, then a voicemail that said, "Camille, your father's back is acting up again. Thomas can't come by. Could you?" I didn't return the call. A week later, a group text popped up. My mom was organizing the annual family BBQ, the one I always helped plan, shop for, cook, clean. This year, the message read, "Thomas, can you handle the food? Camille isn't responding." No one replied. By mid-June, the cracks were showing. Thomas's business, the one he inherited without lifting a finger, got hit with a tax audit. Turns out he'd been skimming payroll and had no clue how to manage the books I used to quietly update for him. His wife posted a family photo with a passive-aggressive caption, "Hard to keep everything together without support." And the whispers started. From church friends, from old neighbors, from the same people who used to gush over the Rhodes boys and give me those condescending smiles. Now they were asking questions. Then came the school call. One of Thomas's boys had been suspended for aggressive behavior and bullying. My mom tried to spin it as kids being kids, but I could hear the panic in her voice when she left a voicemail. "I just don't understand. He used to be such a good boy. Maybe we spoiled them." You think? By the end of the summer, I'd dodged 17 calls, ignored 2 family invites, and declined 1 awkward doorstep visit from Thomas. He stood there with a 6-pack and a "come on, let's just talk" grin. I didn't open the door. Funny how a house starts falling apart when the person patching the leaks walks away. They thought I was the extra, the support act, the side note. But I was the one reminding them of appointments, setting up spreadsheets, keeping the peace, picking up prescriptions, writing sympathy cards when they forgot birthdays. And now they were fumbling, and it wasn't even out of spite. I wasn't doing this to watch them fail. I was doing this to breathe. People talk about going no contact like it's some dramatic decision. But sometimes it's just letting people feel the weight of what you used to carry for them. Not as revenge, as proof. Proof that your quiet efforts weren't invisible. They were just taken for granted. And without them, even the golden ones start to tarnish. By October, the silence from my family wasn't so silent anymore. I started hearing things. From coworkers, from church friends, even from Ava's math teacher. "She's such a sweet girl," the teacher had said. "It's a shame she doesn't see her grandparents anymore. I heard there was some kind of fight." A fight? No, there was never a fight. Just a decision. One they made when they decided my daughter didn't count. Then one Sunday after service, Miss Flynn, the kind of woman who thrives on casseroles and casual gossip, pulled me aside. "I don't mean to intrude," she said, lips pursed, "but Lillian mentioned you've been distant. She said you were struggling. Emotionally." Ah, so now I was unstable. I smiled politely, said nothing, and walked away. But inside, I was boiling. They weren't just ignoring me now. They were rewriting the story, painting me as the bitter daughter, the oversensitive one, the woman who snapped because she couldn't let go of the past. And maybe I would have let them. Maybe I would have stayed quiet. Again. If not for what happened next. One crisp afternoon, I got a call from Mr. Halloran, our family lawyer. He sounded hesitant. "Camille, I'm not sure if this will matter to you now, but we found something. A handwritten addendum to your father's will, dated 6 months before his passing." I didn't speak, just waited. He continued, "In it, he designates a personal savings account and a small piece of property to Ava. Says, and I quote, 'For the only grandchild who visited without being asked, who brought me tea without being told, who asked about my stories when everyone else stared at their phones.'" My breath caught. "Why wasn't that part of the will?" I asked. He hesitated. "Your mother and brother received the copy, but this page appears to have been removed. Until now." I sat in my car for a long time after that, not crying, not raging, just breathing. They didn't just erase Ava from a document. They tried to erase the truth, that my daughter earned her place not by blood, but by presence, by care, by showing up, something they've long forgotten how to do. You know, people think silence means surrender, that if you don't fight back, they've won. But sometimes silence is strategy, because when the truth finally shows up, it's louder than any lie ever told. I didn't take them to court, not because I was afraid, not because they didn't deserve it, but because Ava deserved peace more than I needed revenge. I sent Mr. Halloran a note, thanking him for sharing the addendum. I let him know Ava would accept the gift, not out of spite, not as leverage, but as a quiet acknowledgement from someone who had seen her. And that was enough. With the money my father left her, I enrolled Ava in the school she'd always dreamed of, the one with the art studio and the science lab that looked like NASA built it. I remember the way her eyes lit up when we toured it. "Are you sure, Mom?" she asked, eyes wide. "We can afford this?" "We can now," I said. And she hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe. We settled into a rhythm, no calls, no awkward invitations, no carefully worded texts. It was quiet. And for the first time in years, quiet didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like freedom. One Saturday morning in March, I was sipping coffee on the porch when the mail arrived. Among the bills and flyers was a thick envelope from the school. Ava had applied for a leadership scholarship without telling me. She got it. The letter read, "Awarded for emotional intelligence, empathy, and service to others." I smiled, wiped a tear, and whispered, "Of course she did." Later that night, we made pancakes for dinner. She danced around the kitchen to a playlist I didn't understand. And in that moment, syrup on the counter, music in the air, I knew we'd made it. Not to some big dramatic finish line, just to a life that was ours. Simple, whole, enough. You know, I used to think I had to fight to be seen, That if I didn't keep showing up, keep proving my worth, I'd disappear. But sometimes, walking away is what finally brings you into view. Let me ask you something. Have you ever realized that the people you kept trying to impress were never really looking? And when you finally stopped trying, did you see yourself a little clearer? Because I did. And so did my daughter. We weren't erased. We were simply never meant to belong where love had conditions. And now, we belong to ourselves.